Well, Eric, Iran and its allies weighing how to retaliate against Israel without igniting an all-out war. Tehran is threatening a major attack after Hamas political leader Ismail Haniyeh was assassinated in Tehran last week. The State Department says it should be clear to Iran an attack would mean serious consequences for their government and economy.
It should be very clear to Iran that escalation is not in their interest. It's not in Israel's interest. It's not in any country in the region's interest. We have delivered that message to Israel. We know that other countries have delivered it to Iran.
But it is true they likely have different calculations.
They may make a different calculation, but I can tell you that the message that we have sent loud and clear is we will come to Israel's defense.
All right, retired Navy Captain Bob Wells joins us now. So, Captain Wells, let's start here. The U.S. has warned Iran of, quote, serious risk if it conducts a major attack on Israel. So what, in your expert interpretation, is a serious risk?
Well, thank you very much, Arthel, for having me. And I think the serious risk is obviously a military response. If Iran uses their proxies, as they have done against our troops in Iraq and also in Syria, as you just mentioned, we are likely preparing a response in kind against their proxies. Obviously, they continue to play havoc in the Red Sea with their Houthi proxy. And then if you look at what's happening with Hezbollah, their largest proxy in southern Lebanon, obviously you've got a tit for tat continuing there on the northern front with Israel. I do think an important point is to be made with regard to the preview. We have communicated to Iran directly, likely through our Swiss channel, likely with our other allies in the region. And something's really different since April 13th when they broadcast a response to Israel this time. They've got a brand new president, President Pezeshkian, a doctor, a cardiac surgeon, in fact, and he's having to deal with the IRGC. And if you know, as you know, the IRGC is primarily the capability enhancers for all the proxies in the region.
I'm going to get back to that in a second. But as you know, Captain Wells, risks come with ramifications. What missteps by the U.S. could create damaging residuals?
I think if we're not proportional, I think if we hit Iran directly, the President of the United States has to inform the American people of any type of intent with the nation state of Iran versus the United States of America. We have very important interests with regard to stability. The President is trying to achieve a ceasefire in Gaza to protect humanitarian efforts there, as well as release the hostages. As I understand, August 15th is that particular time. But to answer your question directly, though, an over-response, although we do have the capability. As was mentioned, we have the Theodore Roosevelt Carrier Strike Group with the aircraft carrier in the Gulf of Oman. We've also got ballistic missile defense ships off of Lebanon to protect Israel. We also have put F-22 fighter aircraft in the region. We've got also F-18 aircraft in the region itself. So the United States has a very important, as Admiral Kirby said, quality as well as capability that's postured in the region so that we can answer the call with regard to the mission.
And given the posturing and politics at play, how do you expect the leaders of Iran and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu to play this out? Will they agree to a ceasefire? And if so, how soon?
Well, I think it's a very complicated circumstance. Obviously, the American policy effort is focused on a ceasefire. The Israeli military policy effort is to basically eradicate Hamas and to also reduce risk against the proxies. I think it's going to play out with this new president with regard to what his course of action will be. I think Iran will strike. They may not strike Israel directly. I think with this new president, as I've read some of the internal discussions, may feel lucky that Iran is not at war directly with Israel. And I understand that maybe a suggestion would be on the table to hit other Mossad targets in either Iraqi Kurdistan or in Azerbaijan. So there's other options there to hurt Israel with regard to its particular interests. But back to American interests in the United States. We're doing our best with regard to military posture. Got a very capable central commander, General Kurilla, and we also have diplomacy, which is intense, it's persistent by the administration to try to bring about this ceasefire.
You mentioned proxies a moment ago, and while we look at a map, I want to show a map of Iranian-backed proxies in the Middle East. Let's talk again about Hezbollah and Hamas, the terrorist organizations who are not bound by international protocol. I mean, how can they bungle even the best of plans?
That's a great question, because it's always been interesting to me. You've got nation state of Iran, nation state of Lebanon, nation state of Yemen, yet they have these proxies within their borders. Hezbollah has been growing in terms of its Shiite intent to basically eradicate Israel. They've gone to war, as you remember, back in 2006. There's a UN border force there, so they can overstep their bounds. But just offshore, you've got the United States with strike missiles and other capability that could eradicate certain Hezbollah capability and to defend Israel if it came to that. The other part is the Houthis. We're still receiving quite a bit of challenge there with the Houthis, and that's an everyday military operation, and naval operations have been at combat levels ever since October.
Yeah, I mean, a lot happening indeed. And before I let you go, I want to mention this. Let's not forget the hostages. 115 hostages are being held in Gaza. 41, unfortunately, are considered dead, and their bodies are in the hands of Hamas there in Gaza. You just mentioned that you believe they will be freed come August 15th. I pray that happens, if not before then. Retired Navy Captain Bob Wells, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Arthel.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.